And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Bubba and the Bloom, episode 78. Going to start our positional reviews of the 2023 fantasy baseball season like we did last year. A lot of fun stuff, kind of maybe some standouts that performed better than we thought, some guys that failed, so on and so forth. So we'll get you caught up position by position. We'll start with catchers tonight because why not? That's the position everybody loves to start with in baseball. But before we do that, you can find me on Twitter at BDintric, the podcast at Bubba Bloom Pod, and my co-host, as always, on Twitter at RyanBHQ. Ryan Bloomfield, how we doing, my friend?
Fantastic. Loving this time of year, man. It's baseball forecaster boxes. It's postseason, which has been freaking awesome. It's a weekend sojourn to Chicago to see Notre Dame and USC in that other sport leaving this weekend, and then in 3 weeks, first pitch Arizona. So I am doing fantastic, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a fun time of the year. Real work is slowing down for me, which gives me more time to enjoy the playoff baseball. And I've already started looking. I already did my temporary top 30 catchers. Actually, so that's ironic that we're doing this tonight. We're not going to talk. We're not going to talk about that though, because we're doing 2023. But
only 30.
Yeah, I start at 30 and we go from there. But I've started doing my rankings as I watch playoff baseball. It's a slow problem. I'm not forcing myself into like a marathon, like it's a regular season right now, but it's good to kind of look at things and get an idea of what's going on. So that process is taking place. You get to go to Notre Dame this week, and I'm golfing on Saturday, so it's going to be a good weekend all around. And then you mentioned FPAS, so yeah, should be a ton. Screw your Notre Dame. I got pumpkin patch on Sunday, so I don't know about you, but I got the big weekend ahead of me.
That's the good stuff. We have been to the pumpkin patch. I'm sure we will probably go again before Halloween. We're doing the Mario themed costumes this year. So nice. Little ones are gonna be Mario and Luigi, and I don't know what I'll be. Probably Bowser or somebody.
Yeah, what are you gonna be? Because I was Olaf last year. That was all over Twitter.
I remember that one. I remember Olaf.
So this year, I get to be King Triton, because my daughter's the Little Mermaid. So this is going to be fun. I'm kind of like, if for those that watch Marvel movies, I'm like when Thor has his bad years and he becomes too big. I'm that King Triton. I'm like the one that kind of goes over the hill and not as yoked as the rest of them. So, but I got the beard and the Triton and the crown and all that stuff. So it'll be an exciting Halloween, of course, because that's what you guys care about most on this show. But I'd rather be Bowser. Bowser would work for me, actually. That would fit the mold pretty well.
Bowser will be good. We all saw the Mario movie this year, and they're still all into it, which is really cool because like that was my first. I think I was 5 when I remember getting the original Nintendo and playing Mario, and it's like, holy crap! Like my kids actually like that same thing. Which
was that cool. Their first movie in like at a theater?
My oldest one, yeah, he's 4, but it was his first movie.
We took my daughter to see Paw Patrol last week for the first time in the theater. That was an experience. It was fun for many ways, but you know what I'm trying to say when it's an experience. It's So
that was holding up. That was holding up our, not you, but there were other dads.
Yeah, it was a big weekend for Paw Patrol.
Our draft. I know. Half of our league. So I guess I didn't mention we're also drafting.
Yes.
At this time, which is bizarre, but yeah, like it was funny. Maybe a third of our draft was watching Paw Patrol movie last weekend. So the clock was a little slow, but that's okay.
And then you could tell the other part of the draft that doesn't have kids, what's Paw Patrol? That was the question. Yep. So it was very, very clear and evident to the situation. But I digress. Let's talk a little playoffs real quick before we get into the catcher review, because we actually the LCSs are set about 45 minutes before we started recording here. It's been a blast. We'll start in the American League, where this was set before Thursday's action. You have the Houston Astros took care of the Twins in 3 games to 1. And then the Texas Rangers swept the Baltimore Orioles 3-0. So you got Rangers, Astros. The Astros look like a juggernaut right now, but that Rangers offense is pretty fierce as well. And Nate the Great looks pretty darn good. So I think I still take the Astros in this one just based on experience, but I would love nothing more than to watch the Rangers take this down. So especially with Bochy. I love Bochy. But what's your thoughts on the AL situation so far? Like Royce Lewis is still the man, no matter that they got eliminated.
Yeah, the Minnesota series was awesome too. The atmosphere there, atmosphere everywhere has been awesome, especially these DS series. Like it's been a freaking blast to watch. I'm glad you shout out Mr. Evaldi, because the velocity's back up to like 95,
Yep.
96. He looks like a different pitcher than the one that limped to the finish in September. And so, like, yeah, man, with that offense, Texas at least has a shot. So,
Yep.
I don't know. I out of those two teams, I guess I'm going to root for Texas. I also think Houston's the play, just because they've been there, they know what they're doing, and Yordan Alvarez looks unstoppable.
Oh my goodness!
And the pitching's turned around, so we'll see.
Yeah, Christian Javier, he's looked good in the postseason in 2 starts. Like he looks like the guy that ran up draft boards last year. So it's interesting, and it's an AL West battle. Those two teams fought to win the West, and the Astros won it on the final day. Like the Rangers could have got the bias, could have been completely flipped on its head, but this is what took place. National League. Now I'm going to do my best to be polite here. The Diamondbacks took care of business against the rival Dodgers in 3. That's called a sweep for those keeping track at home. Starting pitching, not ideal for the Dodgers. Nice way I'm going to put that. But Diamondbacks look awesome. You know, they got playing home run derby out there. Corbin Carroll's awesome. I don't like their chances against Philadelphia, but like Philly's just that juggernaut right now that really it should be a Philly-Houston final. But on the flip side, and I'll give you the floor, that Philadelphia-Atlanta series, some of the best theater ever. Like every game, every game. You could tell that the rivalry was there between the fans, between the players and the fans, like, oh man, I could have watched those teams play forever. Like it was such good baseball.
Yeah, it really was. My brother-in-law, actually, he's a big Braves fan. He was at the game tonight, and have not heard back from him. Hope he's
okay.
He's okay, because that's a crowd up there.
Yeah, don't mouth off. Just put your head down and walk out.
Yeah, I think he'll be fine. He's a pretty stand-up guy, so we'll see. I'll keep everyone posted tomorrow if we hear from him. Yeah, man, like it's just been, I don't know if you saw the Joey Votto video from earlier today, but all this like back and forth about Orlando Arcia and Bryce Harper, and I don't know, Attaboy Harper, like it was this 1950. I mean, that's not even like, I don't know, Durai barely even talking shit, and whatever. Like I think that stuff and the back and forth and the staring, like it just makes it so much more interesting and dramatic. It's stuff that baseball needs. And so I'm all for it. I'm absolutely all for it. I think the narrative out there that all of a sudden Bryce Harper was trying harder because Orlando Arcia said that, like he wasn't trying before. I don't buy any of that. So it's not like Harper hit 2 home runs just because Orlando Arcia said something. We need more series like that. It was just awesome. It felt like we're talking about Notre Dame USC. I mean, it felt like a college football atmosphere. The atmosphere every single night. It was just fantastic. So hoping for more of that. I agree. Going back to the Diamondbacks, like I agree. I don't the 4-homer inning against our boy Lance Lynn. Just that final kind of twist of the knife for Lance Lynn's 2023 season. Diamondbacks didn't do anything outside of those 4 homers. Like my call would be Houston against the Phillies, but as we have learned in the playoffs, this has always been, I've always called it like a coin flip tournament. Who the hell knows? And that's why I enjoy it. I just like, we were talking about this earlier. Like I just like to sit back and enjoy big moments and big players and all that. And I do not at all get caught up with this postseason tournament being too short and the best team not winning. It's like that in every sport. Every sport is sold out. I think
March Madness every time. I'm like, March Madness is the best example of the best team rarely ever wins in that thing.
And sports have gone to every sport. Every professional sport has gone down this path of, we saw it in the CBA with baseball. Playoffs are the moneymaker. I mean, the more playoff games there are, the more money the owners get. And it's not just baseball. It's every sport. If you start going down that path, whoever is in your postseason, some sports, like the better team does win more often than not, and that sort of thing. Baseball is much more random. I think 3 weeks ago, the Royals swept the Astros in the weekend series. Like it just happens. That is baseball.
Atlanta got swept by the A's.
Yeah. In September, I believe.
Yeah. Just wrap that around your head.
So just embrace the weirdness, embrace the randomness. That's what I like about the game. And take it for what it's worth and enjoy it. Is kind of how I view the postseason.
You either have to go old school and just have two divisions and have just the LCS, the two top teams, and then you'll get your best. Or like I tweeted out, Manfred is loving everything about this because now they're going to have an extra wild card. And you'll have 8 teams, so no one gets a bye, and they'll make even more money because of like just keep complaining because they'll find a way to skew this into making more money. Don't you worry. So I guess it's almost what they want. Like, yeah, no problem. We'll do it. We'll do it like the NBA where everybody makes the playoffs and then we see what happens. So it's great. I love it. The one thing I'll give the D-backs is they do have Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen, which is a good combo to go up against Wheeler and Nola. Brandon Fott was good against the Dodgers. I don't know if that's going to work every time out. So like Fott versus Ranger Suarez is your kind of what's going to give moment. And yeah, I don't know. So I guess the bright side of games not starting until Sunday and Monday is all the rotations to be lined up where you get all the aces starting out the gate. And so you don't have to worry about any of that. So that'll be cool.
It's also bitter. We were talking about Evaldi earlier. It's bittersweet as hell to see Aaron Nola shove. He looks good. So far.
Looks real good. Looks real good. So, and then playoff baseball, Strider, he pitched well. He didn't really pitch that bad, but Braves just couldn't hit. Bottom line, that's just they got shut down. Dodgers, Freeman and Mookie Betts went like 1 for 22 or something. The one hit was an infield single. Like it was just. You slump at the wrong time. It's baseball. It's baseball. It's crazy.
I was just going to say again, I don't know for a fact, but I'm sure there have been many weekends series this season where Betts and Freeman have done that. It's just in June or May or whatever. And it's a long season. I don't want to say no one pays attention, but that stuff goes under the radar in 162 gamer.
Most definitely. Well, we will next week. We'll kind of give our thoughts on. We'll be right in the middle of the LCSs. I think we'll be around game 3-ish, maybe a game 4 at night in some formats. So we'll break that down for you if Ryan survives Notre Dame. But now we will talk catchers. We will talk about the catcher's position. We're going to go their top 30 based on ADP. Ryan, was this main event OC? What was the ADP on this one that we are using?
All right. So this is going to be the template for all of our reviews. So each week we're going to do a new position. We'll probably break up the maybe like outfield starting pitchers, maybe multiple episodes. If anyone has feedback on this as well, anyone watching, I also tweeted out this board Thursday evening before the show. If anyone has feedback on how to best present this information, we were going back and forth on it, Bubba, earlier today. Always appreciate it. But what we're looking at here is the top 30 catchers by their preseason ADP. And that is main event ADP. So 15 teams, like $1,700 to get in. Really sharp players that know what they're doing, and this is legitimate ADP. So it's the top 30 catchers, and that's how it's ordered. I also have their 2023 rank, and that is from the Razzball Player Rater, kind of the standard for end of season or in season how a player's doing. Razzball puts out their dollar values, and I turn that into a ranking for each player at the position. So you'll see like your boy, Willson Contreras, here was the ninth catcher off the board with an ADP of 122, and he finished the season ranked number 1. So that's how we're kind of reading that, those 4 left columns. I know podcast listeners, this isn't the best audio, but get in the YouTube, check it out. And then on the right, we've just got the batting average, home run, stolen bases, color coded, just so we can kind of quickly spot, like, where were some of these early guys going? Where were the steals? Where were the homers? That sort of thing. So that's what we're looking at. We got 2 main columns here, 15 on each side. And I don't know how you want to do it, but like general review or start talking guys or however you want to go, man.
We'll talk guys, and then it'll turn into us talking about stats and whatnot as we go. But and we'll do like a general recap at the end of kind of if there was an area to target more so than not. Catchers, not so much. Yes, it kind of shows taking the early ones was the way to go. But we'll start with JTR. I just want to bring him up because he's been a fun topic of conversation in certain spots. ADP of 1, but finished the year 5th, according to the Player Rater, which is still a very good season. But when you're talking about an ADP of 27, so in a 15-team league, that's the end of round 2 area. And, 20 homers, 16 steals, 252 average is really, really good. but is it top 27 good? Like he had 22, 21, and 276 in 2022. So I think people are expecting that. I think they were also expecting more games played. He played 135, which is on par with his last 3 seasons and pretty much most of his career. But with Harper missing the first half of the season, there was the rumors he'd play first base. Then he'd go to catch, which would give him more at bats, yada, 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 especially when Rhys Hoskins tore his ACL. So I think there was even higher expectations for JTR's overall production. We talk about, like, there's certain catchers we talked about in the preview of, hey, these guys are going to be extra good. The Varshos, the MJ Melendez's, other guys, because they're going to get constant at bats. That's a thing we love to see. Well, when it came to JTR, that didn't really fabricate the way we thought it would. And so he still put up a great season, pretty much in line with previous seasons, but it wasn't that elite season. I think that, usually it felt like he was a 3rd round pick, maybe even a 4th round pick. He got the boost to the end of round 2. So what's your thoughts? Like, I didn't have any JTR, I think, actually, now I think about it. And I'm more so because I liked other catchers later on, but it's a good season, finished 5th, but I don't think it was worth the ADP that he was taking.
I mean, not right. So like JTR did not meet the ADP threshold, but also, he definitely didn't kill you, kind of what you were saying. Like I took JTR in the early 3rd round of my main event, and I felt like, yes, I wanted a little bit more out of the pick, but to hit 250, 20 homers, 16 steals, like it wasn't necessarily I wouldn't even say it was a bad pick. It was just kind of blah. You're right about the volume. It was kind of there. JTR, I think, was like 8th or 9th in terms of total plate appearances, which I'll talk about a little more as we keep going here at the position. But I don't know, just like a little bit below average season for him. I actually would see this as a buying opportunity for next year. I would think the ADP falls a little bit, and it's just kind of that normal variance of a player we know his true talent, and I think was a little bit below what we were expecting, but could very easily go a little bit above next season. So the stolen bases for me were the big thing, though. Like I thought with the new rules, he'd go a little bit more and get more than 16, but still tied for most at the catcher position with 16 bags, tied with Varsho. No other catcher had more than 6 steals. So it was still a leg up at the position if you were targeting speed there.
Yeah, and that's what makes JT so valuable. Like we've talked about it many times. We're not the only ones that have talked about it, but the idea that you take him early because you get that power speed, which you don't get from any other catchers. So then as you draft other positions later on, you're not as like dead set on having to get steals. You already have some short up in catchers, which definitely has a boost, of course. Dalton Varsho, going to skip over him. Not even be a catcher next year, unless I'm not going to talk about all 30 of these guys. We're going to skip over Varsho. He ADP at 2, finished 10th overall. That's mainly because of the steals. Will Smith, though, this is one because I know we've talked about it even last year. Like, I always have a tough time wrapping my head around Will Smith, the value of Will Smith. Well, he was 3rd ADP, pick of 59, so the end of round 4, and he finished 3rd at catcher, which is obviously a very, very strong season. He had 19 homers, stole 3 bags, hit 261, played 126 games, which is the lowest since he became a regular by a couple games, but his overall plate appearance is still 2nd best of his career. I don't know. I always have a tough time with Will Smith. Great season, though. Good season if you took him. Do you have any thoughts on Will Smith, who continues to kind of be that dude? He just, to me, he's just kind of that quiet guy that I guess gets overshadowed maybe with the Freemans and the Betts in LA, but he hits in the middle of that order and produces.
Was looking at his forecaster box, Will Smith's forecaster box earlier today. Brian Rudd's writing him up for the book. We were going back and forth a little bit, and Brian's conclusion basically was like what you were saying, a solid upper tier catcher. The batting average hasn't been, the plate skills look elite. It just hasn't really ever turned into like a true plus batting average for Will Smith. Always been right around 260. I think there's some upside in the homers. I think he could go 30 home runs. The power metrics support that. Just hasn't happened yet. The last big thing that happened, at least in 2023, and again, this could change next year, but JD Martinez screwed that over in terms of volume. Will Smith played, he's still got 14 DH games, but JD Martinez, I think once early drafters heading into 2023 were hoping for more DH games from Will Smith, and it didn't happen. And I don't know for 24 if Will Smith is back in LA or not, but that would be a big deal.
Yeah, he's not a free agent until 26. He's ARB eligible this year, so yeah, he'll be there. He will be in Los Angeles. Salvi Perez was the fourth one off the board. Hit his 23 homers, but it's kind of a boring year. I don't know if age is catching up to him or not. Let's talk Adley Rutschman. Now, this is a fun one. Fifth ADP, a pick of 70. Finished second overall at the catcher's position. And this is just great. I know it's the guy that we were, at least I was. I feel like we both were, but I could be wrong. Kind of like going back and forth on what to expect. Maybe it's just me. But 20 homers, 1 steal, 277 average. What I loved about Adley, 154 games played, almost 700 plate appearances. Dude beats out. His OBP skills are out of this world for catcher. Only 25. So this could be even more from him coming forward. But big first full season for Adley Rutschman, and his ADP is going to soar this year.
I think it was trying to find the tweet. I think it was from our Lord Zola, who had a little factoid about Adley Rutschman. And it was, his 606. Todd says Adley Rutschman's 687 plate appearances were the most by a player whose primary position was a catcher since Ted Simmons. Don't know who that is. In 1973. So like
Todd would know.
Yes. Though. Adley, like the 46 games at DH were huge for that's kind of what we wanted with Will Smith. And it just like in that, and the lineup wasn't like fantastic, but you get that many plate appearances. It's such a leg up on the rest of this position that, and obviously hitting 277 helps. Would still like to see a little more power, less. So we've talked about Adley a little bit, like in terms of, he's pretty passive up there. Like the big walk rate doesn't really do much for him in fantasy, especially because he doesn't run. But this is like he's going to volume his way. Rutschman is to, I think, being the top catcher, him or JTR, off the board next year.
Yep, I don't disagree with that. I want to just mention Willson Contreras. He was 6th ADP, finished 8th.
Of course you do.
No, Wilson. This isn't my Wilson.
Oh,
this
Willson.
Is Contreras.
Sorry.
This is the other Contreras.
A little excited.
Yeah, 264. Oh, we're going to talk about the other one. Don't you worry about that. Wilson, the older brother, 264 average, 20 homers, 6 steals. What I wanted to bring up here is it felt like he was always getting hurt, especially at the end of the year. He bummed people out to start the season, so it wasn't great. But I want to highlight, it's either he got comfortable in the second half of the season or he started getting healthier kind of in the second half of the season. First half, he played 78 games, hit 240 with 10 homers. Second half, he played only 45 games, but still had 10 homers and it hit 309. So something clicked for Willson Contreras. Only reason why I bring that up is, like, on paper, I guess it feels like a down year for a guy it's been like a top 5 catcher so many times. But in reality, he played very well, and I don't think we're done with seeing really good Willson Contreras just yet.
Agreed. Do you remember, like, back, I don't know exactly when, but like, remember what did they do with Willson? They like blame Willson Contreras for all the struggles that the Cardinals were having.
Yep.
They moved him away from the position.
They weren't going to
let him catch remember that for like a week, and then they just like moved him back.
Yep.
And
there's a lot going on there.
Yeah. That's a good way to treat your prized free agent who signed from your biggest rival. And so, like, there was just a lot going on for Willson Contreras in the first half. I would much more trust what we saw from Contreras in the second half, plus the track record pre-2023. I think Willson Contreras is a great bounce back candidate for next year. I will have plenty of time to talk about that. But a quiet rebound where, like, early on in the season, there was just a lot of bad pub around Contreras, and he quietly did pretty well, finishing in the top 10 at the position. One of these years, Willson Contreras is going to move off. He's already 31, and I don't know how long he'll stay, but 2024, he'll still be catcher and eligible, and for 25. But one of these years, he's going to not be. But for now, enjoy it. I think he's just one of those like steady guys. If you don't want to spend big on a JTR, Smith, or Rutschman, or brother William, I think you can go here for a little bit of a discount.
Yeah, he's a slightly younger by like a year or two Salvi Perez. Like, Salvi's starting to slowly DH more and everything, but still has a little bit of pop. Wilson's better than Salvi, but that's kind of the career arc we're seeing there, like you're talking about. So I could see that taking place for sure, especially as banged up as Willson got, like playing DFS and everything. You get the alerts almost every night. out with the hand injury because he got hit on the hand again, or out with he like tweaked his hammy, he's out for like 2 days. There's a lot of that later in the year, which comes with age, folks. Comes with age. So
and the position.
Yeah,
And the
so
position
it
itself.
definitely makes sense there. You had Alejandro Kirk 7th, finished 29th. MJ Melendez 8th, 14th. MJ won't be a catcher next year. If you want to talk about Kirk, you can. I got nothing really to say. He did play better as the season ended, but as long as Danny Jansen's there, and Danny Jansen gets hurt every year, that's just the way it's starting to go here. But as long as Danny's there, Danny's the better fantasy player than Alejandro Kirk, it feels like. But there is Kirk if you have anything to add to that.
No, he was the major bust. And so in the top 10 of ADP for catchers entering 2023, 8 of those top 10 finished in the top 10. Like it was a very safe. If you went early catcher, you had an 80% chance of pretty much returning that value. The 2 exceptions were Alejandro Kirk, who finished 29th, which is just awful, 250, 8 home runs. And then the other one was MJ Melendez, who we were just waiting to turn it around, and it just never happened. So it's just kind of the shout out there to Kirk and Melendez as the only 2 guys who pretty much crapped the bed. The rest of the top 10 at catcher was pretty stable. And I think that's why we're probably going to see a lot of the same guys going in roughly the same spots in 2024 drafts as we saw to 2023.
Yep, it's a good call. Joe Arico's in the chat, said he got Willson Contreras in the 10th round and Alejandro Kirk in the 16th round in the early on the wire 15-team fab draft that is already going on right now. So that's the first fab draft I've seen. So
I will say I like the Willson in the 10th a lot more than I like
the Kirk in the 16th, 100%. But catcher too could do worse for sure.
Need that second catcher.
Now the moment I've been waiting for since we decided to do catcher previews, whatever you want to call it.
I'll be back in 5.
Willson Contreras, the better Contreras, which I got so much shit for last year. I'm sorry for the language, but I stood by that one out the gate last year, and I caught flack all over the place. Now, the one thing I'll say is I thought he had 30 home run power. He didn't. He hit 17. But he hit 291. He had 6 stolen bases. He walked 10.3, and most importantly, struck out 20.6% of the time, best of his major league career by far. He struck out almost 28% last season alone. So we saw big gains from Willson Contreras this past year. He's been a big BABIP guy most of his career, so it might go down a bit. I'm not naive to that. But I just love everything about this guy. His barrel rate was down, but his hard hit rate was better. The X stats scream regression. There's no denying that. But I love Willson. I don't know if I'll have as much this year because we'll do that in the 2024 preview because his ADP is going to be much higher. But the talent level for where he went with an ADP of 125 or a 122, 9th catcher off the board, finished number 1 overall. Hat tip to you, Willson. And the big thing for Mr. Willson Contreras that helped out a ton with the overall stats, boy played in 141 games, had over 600 plate appearances because he DH'd and even played first base from time to time. So they had that bat in the lineup. He was hitting second a lot of games. So he's right behind Christian Yelich, which does not stink, and in front of a couple other boppers. So Willson Contreras, well done, my friend. Well done.
Good speech. You've been planning that one for months, so good execution on the.
I remember last episode after we got off air, I said, "Hey, bar question for you. Can you tell me who the number 1 rated catcher was last year?"
Should have known. And I got it wrong. I had no idea. I had no idea it was Willson Contreras.
Most people wouldn't.
Yeah, 611 plate appearances, second most to Adley Rutschman. You make a great point on the BABIP. I think if you it's been a 350-ish BABIP each of the last 2 seasons. So I don't Contreras could legit 290 hitter.
Yeah.
Especially, and you mentioned the strikeout gains. This was skill supported batting average. I do worry about the power. 17 homers and 611 plate appearances isn't really that great.
Not ideal.
And the raw power metrics aren't really there either. But hell of a season for Contreras. If you drafted that to get 611 plate appearances of a 291 batting average, and sneakily, just with that with that playing time is 86 runs, 78
for a
RBI.
catcher,
At catcher, that's
outstanding.
that's massive. And then obviously, like you said, the 6 steals.
And I'll throw this out. He'll only be 26 next year. Still extremely young. He could still be developing, as crazy as that sounds. He could either start selling out for power, or we might see just other adjustments take place. There's a lot of ways that ship can still sail, which is very interesting with William Contreras. So I'm a big fan. I'm looking forward to seeing how ADP kind of shakes out over the next few months for these early drafts and before I really get going in drafts, because I love him. I'd love to have more shares. I am not giving up on him at all. It just comes to a point like, is he a top 70 player compared to other players? And that's where the discussion gets interesting on the spectrum.
So it's funny, in our current draft our whatever we want to call it, degenerate meatball draft champions, mock draft, we drafted the first 7 rounds back in August, and William Contreras was not picked. William Contreras, when we restarted it last weekend in the 8th round, William Contreras was the 3rd pick off the board behind Tariq Skubal, which was just a fantastic pick.
Phenomenal pick. By
just a legendary owner. And then Yamamoto, foreign import, and then it was William Contreras. So William Contreras, like, technically in our draft, went 3 rounds after Realmuto, Smith, and Rutschman. I think he still goes behind those guys, but I think maybe a round or 2.
Yeah, he's probably more of a top 5 guy now than a top 10 guy. And that's where it's going to get interesting on where does that top 5 land in the draft board. That'll be the situation at hand. Like in 12s, I might be getting all the William Contreras because you can take those gambles later on in the draft. So we'll see. Obviously, that's a whole nother podcast. And by then, we'll have ADP data for you. After the best catcher in baseball in 2023, you had Sean Murphy. Let's talk Sean Murphy, because this is one that's a fun discussion point. ADP 10, 125, finished 9th overall, 251, 21, and no stolen bases. But there is a caveat here, folks. I caught some flack early in the season when Travis d'Arnaud was healthy and they were platooning every day and Murphy wasn't like elite by any means. And then d'Arnaud gets healthy and Murphy crushes. Okay, who wouldn't have saw that coming? But second half of the season, after hitting 306 with 17 home runs in the first half, Sean Murphy hit 159 with 4 home runs.
Oh, that's not 159
with 4 home runs. If you want to have more fun with this, in the month of September and October, Sean Murphy hit 111 with 1 home run. That was his only, no doubles. That was his only extra base hit. He had a total of 8 extra base hits in the second half, 4 doubles and 4 homers. He went into a shell when he went back into platooning with Travis d'Arnaud. So, with that in mind, what's your thoughts on the season from Sean Murphy? People probably started in that second half.
Yeah, and when I hear stuff like that, I am actively scanning the RotoWire injury log just to see, like, did he get nicked up in the middle of the year? He had a hamstring in June, did not go on the IL, but missed a few games. I'm just trying to see if it was like a hidden injury or something, but that's pretty much it for Sean Murphy. Pretty much an inexplainable fall in the second half that we talk about this a lot, like the set and forget guys that you just kind of, if you're not paying attention in the middle of the season, this can come at you. I'm sure in 12s, Sean Murphy was heavily started in a lot of leagues and was just doing absolutely nothing for you for a good 2 months before you finally either got him out in September or started drafting fantasy football.
I dropped him for Bo Naylor with 4 or 5 weeks left in the season. It worked out very well. Just because as long as Travis is there, and I don't see that changing next year. So that'll make things interesting. But like, if you look at the grand scheme of things, really good season. But man, if you could have maximized that 309 first half with 17 homers and then made a roster, you could have picked up Yainer Diaz. You could have picked up a lot of dudes. Like, you probably wouldn't have done it right away. You probably waited at least a month, but there still would have been 2 months of just amazing production that you could have had instead of the sub 200 average. It was very, very shocking how bad it was. So
he was on pace for 100 RBI through most of the season.
Yep. And then it didn't happen.
Well, through half the season.
Exactly. A guy I want to talk about because I feel like everyone was on the Tyler Stevenson train going into the season. 11th catcher off the board, finished 18th, 132 average. just quiet season, though. Hit 243, 13 homers, still in Great American Small Park, still played at 142 games. But I'm trying to figure out, does he ever meet that potential? Because this past season, it didn't a lot of people, not everyone, a lot of people were expecting the jump. We saw the power numbers, the production in a small sample, all these things in the previous season, and now it was his job. It was going to be his role, and it never really came to fruition, Ryan.
Never did, and just had his forecaster box as well. And Stevenson, like, the metrics don't look that great, to be honest. For someone as big as Stevenson is, like in that park, you got to have more than 13 home runs, especially for as many games as Stevenson played. So, like, I got the case for Stevenson before the season. Like, the volume, I think, in that park with that lineup looked pretty good, and the volume was there. 43 DH games, 92 at catcher, 8 at first base. Like, he played, but man, 243 with 13 homers. That's with skills that don't really support it. I guess skills that support it supporting a bad outcome. It was a rough go.
Let's talk about the big dumper. Cal Raleigh, pick 159, 12th catcher off the board, finished 4th overall. And this is what I got wrong. He hit 30 homers. I agreed the power was there at 27 the year before. I wasn't questioning the power. The year before, he hit 211 and struck out almost 30%. Well, he struck out 28%, but he hit 232. And if you can hit 230 with 30 home runs as a catcher, you can play anywhere you want. And the power, the metrics look decent. I was quite impressed with the improvements. Maybe it was the team around him was even better. That obviously can help any player out. But Cal Raleigh took a big step, which is going to be interesting for 2024, of course. But in 2023, to finish 4th catcher off the board, like, if you waited on catchers, say you didn't even go William, you waited even longer on catchers because you wanted the power that Cal Raleigh, and you're like, I'll figure average out. You got 230 on top of that. That's an amazing return for Cal Raleigh.
Yeah, and to one up your bar trivia, although I don't know what the best way to frame this, because obviously the answer is Cal Raleigh. But who led catchers in home runs, not only this year but last year as well?
Yep.
It was Cal Raleigh, and even this year, like, no one else at catcher hit more than 23 home runs. Or no, Francisco Alvarez at 25. It looks like.
Yeah.
But Raleigh at 3rd. Like, Raleigh was head and shoulders from the power department above the rest of the field. Yes, the batting average hurts, but finished in the top 5, and I don't really see much of a reason for that to change. So I think Cal Raleigh, especially if you can pair him with, like, I mean, maybe we'll talk about like a Keibret Ruiz, who went a little bit later in 2023 drafts, but had the batting average, just didn't have the power. Like, that's a hell of a combination if you're going to wait in the middle rounds to go grab your 2 catchers. But yeah, another successful year from the dumper. Just the power maven of the position over the last 2 seasons.
Yep, pretty impressive stuff. Danny Jansen was next. Then you mentioned Keibret Ruiz, and I love that shout out you gave there. ADP of 190, 14th catcher off the board, finished 12th. He was a guy that I was touting going into 2023. If you just want boring but a great batting average from catcher, which is hard to find, Keibret's your dude. And everyone's like, oh, he's got no power because he only hit 7 home runs. And I kept saying, like, yeah, he's probably not like a 30 home run dude, but I always thought it was better than this. Like, he showed it in the minors. He was still so young. Like, so many things I was thinking, okay, we're going to see, like, he's turned 20. He's 24 this past year. Like, let's give the kid a break for a second. He finished with 18 home runs. Like, he had 18 homers, still struck out 10%. Like, he's everything everyone wanted Alejandro Kirk to be, but Keibret Ruiz is that dude. And I don't see that changing. So I like the call you made. Like, if you took a gamble on a different catcher, or even if you wanted to wait and make him your catcher one, Keibret Ruiz, he brings such a good floor, and he backed it up this year.
The floor's there mostly because of that playing time. 5th most plate appearances of catchers that are eligible in 2024. And with that volume, you don't have to be a great power hitter. You can, if you hit 18 home runs over 600 plate appearances, or 562 that he had.
He had more homers than the best catcher in baseball. Come on.
There you go. Like, there's a difference between 562, that 18 homers over like 400 at-bats is, I don't know, 12. And that doesn't look good, but he's able to overcome that with just so much volume. And that's not going to change in Washington. And then the contact skills, Like that batting average, that 260 batting average, I think could even go up. I think this guy could
agree.
be one of the rare like batting average assets at the position next year. And last but not least, you mentioned the age, the pedigree. Again, Ruiz is entering his age 25 season in 2024. So who's to say this power might not tick up in kind of the middle or the prime of Ruiz's career. I just took Ruiz in our draft at the end of the 11th round, so like 165 overall, and felt pretty good about that.
Yeah, I think that's probably close. Like we said, 190 last year. I could see him hitting closer to that 150 range by the time things maybe even higher, because just that assured volume that you get with the assured production. Because I 100% agree. I think the batting average could get even better. Like it could be like some really, really, really big stuff ahead. Gabriel Moreno, ADP 243. He was 15th off the board, finished 22nd. So the finish doesn't sound great, but a few things here. He did hit 284 with 7 homers and 6 steals, which is big. He kind of kept getting yo-yoed around in the lineup with the D-backs, plus was hurt a little bit. But the production, we've already seen it in the postseason, is great. What I wanted to highlight, though, first half, second half splits. First half, he played 66 games, hit 267 with 2 home runs. Second half, he played 41 games, hit 5 home runs, and hit 313. There's something called a comfort level with young players and regular playing time with young players. Gabriel started to get that. I love what we saw, especially as the season finished out. He's going to be, I think, one of the next big catchers going forward.
Yeah, I mean, you're taking a little bit for 2024. You're taking a little bit of a leap of faith that he just gets better. But it will be Moreno's age 24 season. Like you were saying, there was a lot thrown on Moreno's plate. First and foremost, the trade. I mean, the Dalton Varsho trade. Like there was a lot of expectations on Gabriel Moreno coming right out of the gate, and kind of yo-yoed a little bit. But I do think starting next year, I mean, he will be the guy in Arizona, and I will definitely take the over on. Because he had 380 plate appearances. Definitely take the over on that next year. I wonder what the speed looks like for Moreno. Like the stolen base success rate, 75%. If you get 6 steals in less than 400 plate appearances, dude could lead the position, maybe outside of JTR in steals next season. Because again, just going to be 24. Like it's not going to get old and slow. So that's something to watch.
Yeah, if you can extrapolate it to like say 500 plate appearances, say he plays 140 games, like I could be, I'll say he plays 130 and gets like 450. Let's narrow it down a bit. So now we're hitting 280 with 17 homers maybe and 15 steals or something. Like that's a pretty awesome season. Maybe it's even better. Maybe it's a little worse. I don't know. I'm just like speculating here. So it'll be interesting to see where he lands on things. It doesn't help that he's crushing the postseason right now. That's going to make that ADP climb quite a bit as well.
It's interesting I keep referencing our draft, but it is just interesting to look at. 11th round. So I took Keibret Ruiz at the end of the 11th. Right before that was Bo Naylor, Gabriel Moreno, and who we're going to talk about next, Jonah Heim.
Yep.
Who do you take out of that crew? I think I know your answer, but
I still take the guy we're about to talk about in Jonah Heim, but I love Bo Naylor. Like he's not on this board. He'll be an honorable mention later just because he came up so late. I mentioned I picked him up for Sean Murphy. I love what we saw from him. Like big expectations in my mind. And it's one of those, we've talked about it with other positions in previews in the past that, okay, you have like 4 that you know are going to go by each other. Take the second to last one so you don't get hosed, basically. Like just kind of keep an eye on it. I don't think you're going to go wrong with any of them. And they all bring a different skill set where like Gabriel and Naylor both hit for average. Both should run pretty well too. So maybe in the end, when I look at it more, I might take a Naylor or a Moreno over Jonah Heim just for those 2 reasons.
Wow.
But let's go to Jonah Heim because he doesn't run as much. That's the caveat here.
Yep.
He was ADP 250, 16th catcher off the board, finished 6th, and that's with missing a good chunk of time. Surprised he even came back. Maybe he shouldn't have, but he finished the year hitting 258 with 18 homers and 2 stolen bases. I say maybe shouldn't have because it was like a hand wrist injury. And the month of August, he played 12 games and hit $150 with 1 homer. September, 225 with 3 homers. So much lower than it was either 265 was his lowest average in any month prior to that. Took a hit there. Like he hit 217 in the second half of the season compared to 282 in the first half. but still a great season for Jonah Heim. I love Jonah Heim this year. They said he was going to be the everyday catcher. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't love him again next year.
Yeah, and I think you can kind of throw out a lot of that post-injury stuff for those reasons. Imagine if you did the old Texas two-step,
with Garver,
Heim, and then took Garver when Heim went down. That would have been a hell of a
huge
thing. So finishing sixth. It was Heim time all the time in the first half. Yep. It was a wonder to see.
Yep, what a great gif on Twitter. Thank you for that one. Every Heim time. That was an easy one. We don't need to talk about Christian Vasquez because Ryan Jeffers was the better catcher there, and it showed. Yasmani Grandal, I just want to bring him up because you mentioned last week, like I said it and forget it guy. I know this was in a 2024 preview, but we keep mentioning it. I just pretty much am already crossing him off my list. If you have anything about 2023 to talk about, knock yourself out. But 234 with 8 homers and 0 steals, it seems like something's broken with this guy.
And the White Sox have pretty much given up on him. I think they're going to go Corey Lee and just go. So goodbye, Yasmani.
I agree. Shea Langoliers. This is an intriguing one because there's some expectations early in the year, like draft time, slow start. Finished with an interesting stat line. He was the 19th catcher off the board, finished 17th overall on the season. He played 135 games, 22 homers, 3 steals, but only hit 205, and he only hit 218 last year. So the strikeout rate dropped 5%, which was nice. But there's still, I guess, some questions with Langoliers, but the power numbers were ridiculous. So as a whole, were you good with this season from Langoliers, or are there some concerns for you?
It was fine. I mean, remember he was not Langoliers was not catcher eligible entering 2023. Yeah. So that actually, despite that, he was still the 19th quote unquote catcher, but I think that was a little bit deflated because if you took Shea Langoliers, you had to draft a third catcher at least for like the first 2 weeks of the season until Langoliers got that catcher eligibility. So that being said, like, yeah, a little bit of a disappointment, especially the batting average. Like, good God, 205 is really bad. And if you're gonna hit 205 in that park with that lineup, it's not great. That said, I do think Langoliers is like a 220, 230 hitter. Not great, but like you pair 20-25 home run power with that. I think he's fine as a late catcher. So I just kind of think he, as a rookie, like did his thing and was okay. Streamable, especially in 12s, but even in 15s as well. So it'd be interesting to see if he holds on to the role over Tyler Soderstrom in 2024. I don't know, but I don't know. Fine season, I guess, based on where he went.
Yeah, because eventually they're going to want to play Soderstrom, and with Ryan Noda's production, it kind of feels like he's stuck at first base. So I don't know what they're going to do with Soderstrom. That's an interesting one there.
It was pretty bad himself, too.
Yeah, he was horrible.
I will say.
Very bad. There's Eric Haas. Christian Betancourt started out the year amazing. Only finished 225, 11 homers and a steal, and wasn't even playing regularly towards the end. So that was a big bummer. Joey Bart, he's not going to be a Giant anytime soon. Elias Diaz was good, 23rd ADP, finished 13th, 267, 14 and 1. I would say it's the Coors effect, but I don't know. I feel like when you look at Elias Diaz, he's going to be 33 next year. He's not a free agent until 2025. I think we maybe thought more power potentially, or at least a better batting average, but it's still not a bad season, 267 and 14. Any thoughts on Mr. Diaz?
No, just a trivia question.
Okay.
Who was the 2023 All-Star Game MVP?
Yeah, it was Elias Diaz. That is correct.
Like what?
Yep.
No, that's all I got. Like, I don't know. Streamer who just got hot for a little while and was fine.
Yeah. Nick Fortes was what he was, but Bo Naylor is the one I want to talk about. People were expecting Bo Naylor to start the season or early on in the season at some time with the Guardians. He was ADP at 353, the 25th catcher off the board. Still finished 28th, which says a lot about his production to me. That's why I wanted to highlight. Like, people might see 28 and be like, whatever. 237, 11 homers, 5 steals. That's not like jumping off the page for you. But when it comes to Bo Naylor, it was kind of a slow start, but a great finish. And if you combine his his 270 plate appearances at AAA with his 230 plate appearances at the bigs, 24 homers and 7 steals, and a decent average. But what I wanted to say, the strong finish from Bo Naylor. If you look at the months of September, like August, he hit 203, July, he hit 240, but September, he hit 304 with 4 home runs and 4 stolen bases. Started playing pretty much every day in August. It translated into September. So finished the year very, very strong, which I love to see from a young ball player. So I have expectations because throughout the minors, he was a double-digit steals, double-digit homer guy for a decent average as well. So I'm very interested in a guy like Bo Naylor, especially the fact he'll be 24 next season.
Yeah, man, this is one that, and I'm glad we're doing this review because this kind of slipped past my radar for just how I knew it was decent, but good Lord. Yeah, September was fantastic. And the big thing too, like supported by the plate skills, the plate discipline, especially for someone who is a rookie, 23-year-old, like that's the stuff you want to see from Bo Naylor. The plate skills with the power speed, like God, you don't want to, well, at this point in the draft, you do want to kind of take some shots. Like it's hard for me to expect something someone's never done before in the majors, but Bo Naylor hasn't had a chance to. These skills look like he could be a 2020 catcher
Yes.
next
Agreed.
season.
Yeah, that's why.
I mean, presumably he'll be the Guardians guy, right? I mean,
he should be their everyday guy. Yeah, there's no reason he shouldn't be, and that's why you combine that when you ask me back to the question of Moreno, Heim, Naylor.
yeah,
Like I love Jonah Heim, but you start looking at the power speed combinations of Moreno and then Naylor might even be better than both of them. Like in the grand scheme of things, we might be a year or two ahead of things, but that's who I think Bo Naylor is, and that's why people were taking him towards the end of drafts, thinking if he's up even a month into the season, this is the dude you want to be your catcher. Like he's got that skill set, which is elite. So I'm very, very intrigued with what we get to see from Bo Naylor this next year.
sounds like this is your 2024 Willson Contreras.
Well, if you give me 2 seconds here, I'll give a little peek behind the curtain.
we got
the
exclusive rankings.
My early 2024. I still have Naylor 11th, but even just doing this conversation, I feel like he's going to be closer to. I don't know. It's hard to put him up ahead of some of these guys, but this is why they're early and they're not released yet. But I'll probably have him a little higher than that, especially the next guy we talk about. I'll have him over him for sure. So,
well, to go back to what I was saying before about 8 of the top 10 catchers finishing in the top 10, there's value in that consistency of guys that have done it before, and that may make it hard for Naylor to like break through
100%.
This year, as opposed to those guys who have been a lot more consistent.
I guess the thing is, and again, we'll do this in the previews as well, but dudes like Naylor are guys I am circling for my catcher too to try, and I'll jump ADP to get him I'll jump ADP that'll get him at catcher. That's my point. Like Jonah Heim was a guy I had to have at catcher too, so I jumped him like a round or two to have him as my catcher too. Bo Naylor will be a dude who unless I'm in a lot of drafts with people that listen to my shows, I will have a lot of Bo Naylor most likely.
I was just going to say he may not be a catcher too. I haven't checked our numbers on our podcast lately, but if they're if they're big numbers, Bo Naylor will not be a catcher too now.
Well, good for him. Kudos. I'm really curious to get your thoughts on Francisco Alvarez. He was 358 ADP, 26 off the board, finished 15th. A lot of that was due to the power, but he only hit 209. 25 homers, 2 stolen bases. What I want to highlight for you, though, is this was a really rocky season. He pretty much started playing regularly in May. He hit 292 in May with 7 homers. In June, he hit 151 with 4 homers. In July, he hit 275 with 8 homers. August, 139 with 1 homer. September, 200 with 4 homers. So he had 2 good batting average months. I'd say a handful of good power months, but as a whole, there's a lot of drain just to get the power. And I know he's still young. I know things can change and improvements, and people are super high on Francisco Alvarez. But as a whole, this season, I could never lock in a trust factor with Francisco Alvarez, basically.
Yeah, because it just wasn't there from batting average standpoint, but like 222 BABIP, man. Good God, that is terribly low. I mean, we don't know. Every hitter establishes their own BABIP, and so maybe maybe this is Francisco Alvarez's, like, maybe he's a below average BABIP guy, but 222, that's not going to happen again. Like the actual, like, the K rate 26% isn't terrible. Chasing 29% of the time, I think that's better than league average. I don't really buy that low batting average. And then you pair it with the power, which looks very legit.
Yes.
I don't think he's like a Bo Naylor, Jonah Heim type, but I would, I don't know. I'm pretty intrigued.
Type. He's Cal Raleigh.
That's a really good comp. He's
two
like Cal Raleigh.
2 years ago, Cal Raleigh hit 209 with like 27 homers.
Yeah. And to what I was saying too, like if Alvarez's BABIP goes from like 222 to just below average 270, 280, that probably takes his batting average to what Raleigh had, which was 232 and around 30 home runs. I mean, the thing is, if you're going to make you choose between those two guys, the cop-out answer is like, depends on your style. Raleigh, I think you know what you're going to get. Alvarez could be a lot better. Could be rough. So,
and you'll be paying the similar price tag though. That's the thing.
I would think so. Able to win.
Yeah. Their ADP is gonna be very close. Like right now, I have Raleigh 9th and Alvarez 10th in my rankings. So they're right next to each other. And it's for the power upside. That's the beauty of catchers. And again, I'm trying not to do too much 24 talk, but it's very difficult because catchers is a position I feel like, okay, do you want average or do you want power? And that you can totally cater to that throughout the draft. Some guys will steal, but you usually have to take them earlier. But you can basically, like, if you want batting average, probably go more Gabriel Moreno, Bo Naylor, those guys. If you want power, you got your Cal Raleighs, your Francisco Alvarez, stuff like that. And that's what kind of makes it a interesting position to kind of form out your team. So we'll see how that works.
The beauty of catchers, I think we need to frame that.
That'll be the title of my memoir. And then after that, it was like Jose Trevino, Mitch Garver, who was amazing, 28 catchers, finished 16th, 270.
More homers than Jonah Heim.
Yep, 19 home runs. He had more homers than Willson Contreras. What are we talking about? 19 home runs. He was a beast off the waiver wires because he was hurt for so long. Finished great. He did that in 344 plate appearances. It's like the thing with Garver, we've always said, everyone that I've ever heard talk about Mitch Garver's power's legit. Just got to stay healthy because he doesn't do that very well. But man, when he came back from injury, that second half of the season, he had 277 with 15 bombs. That was a monster waiver wire acquisition. Like a lot of people will talk about these rookies. Mitch Garver was a beast off the waiver wires.
Free agent next year, so
yep.
He for his sake peaked at the right time. Should get paid.
I'm really curious to where he goes. Obviously, I haven't looked into every team's needs at the catcher position, but like Texas should be smart and just bring him back because he could DH and split time with Heim. It gives you depth in case an injury takes place, but a lot of teams can use him as well. So I guess we'll have to see.
Like I wonder, I don't know, 2024 talk, but like I wonder if I doubt he would hold up as the primary catcher over a full season.
That's the thing is
Garver's never been able to do it. So
that'll be what every team will take in the negotiations when he wants to get a job. Like, oh yeah, we like you, but we're gonna pay you like the backup because like we can't trust you. I think a fun team for Mitch Garver, the Chicago Cubs, who are relying on Yan Gomes these days. That would be awesome. But again, another discussion for another show. But that'd be pretty cool. Rounding out the top 30, got Indy Rodriguez, who a lot of us had high hopes for, didn't quite pan out. Austin Nola, who is no more. But you did have some honorable mentions.
Did he die?
Well, it's Luis Campusano's world, and we're all just living in it. Honorable mentions. Guys that weren't drafted in the top 30, Ryan, and were just amazing assets to the fantasy baseball season. The 11th finishing catcher, according to the Razzball Player Rater, was one Yainer Diaz, who finished with a 282 average and 23 home runs in 377 plate appearances, and only played in one playoff game in the LDS because Dusty Baker is Dusty Baker. But Yainer Diaz is awesome. I just pray to God they just don't keep him behind Maldonado any longer, but that's Dusty Baker again. But if Diaz is a primary catcher, like we talked earlier about 65-35 type splits, if he is the primary, even if it's not full-time, this dude's a beast.
Yeah. Yes. 100%. Like I from a non-fantasy baseball aspect, I kind of get the Maldonado thing.
You need the defense. Yeah.
It was interesting though that just we talk about this all the time, like injuries, stuff works out, injuries happen, and that's how Yainer Diaz got so much playing time. And Diaz only played 60 games at catcher. He played 8 at first base, 38 at DH. Like there are multiple passes. I think they even tried him in the outfield, not in games, but just seeing what they have there. I think they're going to find ways to get Yainer Diaz his bat in the lineup. And the other interesting thing, really encouraging thing, was the consistency. Once Diaz was pretty much a full-time player in June, 5 homers in June, 6 in July, 6 in August, 4 in September. It wasn't like this guy just went on a heater and then kind of crapped out after that. He was pretty consistently and hit 300 or higher in 3 of those 4 months as well. Pretty consistently an elite hitter. So that's just another one who, like, the cop out is depends on the playing time, but he's right there in the top 10 as well. I think
he's better than Willson Contreras. I'll say it. He just needs to play. I know William will play. I know he will. Yainer, if I knew Yainer would play at least 140 games, he's better than Willson Contreras. So that's just
that's a take. That's bold coming off the number 1 ranked finish, but I can see it, man.
Yeah, he's better, like, because they average the power. It's legit. The dude's is awesome. Really, Armchair Roto on Twitter. He joined me for the Astros preview this past year, and we at the end of each team preview we talked like, hey, couple like prospects we might see. Yainer Diaz was on his list. He's like, this is the dude that they need to call up and play, and he did not disappoint. So I'll give a shout out to Armchair Roto on that one. That was a very, very good call.
I'll do one to Jock Thompson as well. He was on it back in March too. Martin Maldonado is a free agent entering next season, so we'll see.
Oh, do the right thing. The thing is, you can get Maldonado for so cheap, and he'd be happy to hit like $2 million to come back and catch for the Astros. And like you said, real life baseball, it makes sense to play Maldonado all the time. Like it does, because they got this 8 other guys that can drop bombs everywhere pretty much. And you have a pitching staff, especially it's getting younger. So you need that veteran presence behind the dish. It makes sense. Like, I don't disagree with it. It just sucks. But to just get Michael Brantley out of the way, that's the answer. Just get Brantley out of there, and we're good.
Well, yeah, you won't. He's Brantley's free agent as well.
Yeah, they can't bring him back again. They've done that a few years now. They can't do it again. A couple other honorable mentions. Young Gomes, just wanted to throw him out there. 19th overall catcher, ADP of 470. Steady Eddie, 10 homers, 267. He's kind of always been that dude. If he gets playing time, he's productive. It's just a matter if he's going to get playing time. Jake Rogers finished well. I'll let you have the floor here if you want. 21st catcher. His ADP was 700. A trivia question. Was he one of the catchers that hit over 20 home runs this season?
It's terrible trivia. Yes.
We should have questions like at the end of the show, but we don't. 21 bombs for Jake Rogers. And he got Eric Haas out of there. Eric Haas was the guy that was drafted with an ADP of 287. People thought that's who Eric Haas would be. It turned out to be Jake Rogers.
And this goes to your point. I mean, you talk all the time, Bubba. You can stream catchers off the wire. There are guys there. Jake Rogers was that dude this season. I picked him up in labor pretty much over the last 2 months of the season, and Jake Rogers did quite well in that spot. So I think someone he'll go pretty cheap. I mean, there's some pretty big contact issues. I don't know if he hits over 230, but power looks real, and I don't know. Tigers like to play their guys, and that lineup by the end of the season wasn't half bad.
No, so I'm intrigued there. Connor Wong, I'm glad this name was on here because it does not get talked about enough. 24th catcher, ADP of 669, 9 homers, 8 steals, 235 average. The average could be more to be desired, but a little bit of power and speed combo. Even played second base at times. Like, they're just keeping him out there. Struck out a ton, but the fact he played in 126 games at an ADP like that, it's very hard to find. And I don't see why he wouldn't be the primary catcher next year in Boston. So that's an interesting one for me. Other than that, though, Blake Sable, Giants guy, 26, 643. And then Luis Campusano. This is another one. 30th catcher, ADP of 441. I was actually thought he would have been higher than 30th, but then you look at his stat line. I guess so. .319 average though, 7 homers. He only played in 49 games. That's what kind of kept him
That's
down.
why.
Yeah, but if you give him like a full season, dude's got legit power. He's hit for average everywhere he's played. Pretty good plate skills. Should be the primary. I guess that's why I said Austin Nola's no more. So Luis Campusano is one of those dudes that I think really takes that jump. A lot of us, like myself, I know Curlin and others, I drafted him in like every draft and hold I had because I thought he'd take over earlier in the season. Took a little longer than I wanted it to take, but because Gary Sanchez showed up out of nowhere. But Luis Campusano is a legit dude, and again, he's only going to be 26 next season. So the catcher's position is so young. It's actually a lot of fun because this could be like we could do this review for probably the next 5 years, and there's going to be a lot of the same names on this list. Actually, like there's a lot of young catchers right now, so it's good.
Yep, it's good to see the position change from just a total suck to. I mean, your second catchers are still down there, but
Yeah,
there's a very very solid top 10, and I would say pretty solid top 15, 20 right now.
yeah, and that's why it's like it's hard. Well, again, that's 2024 talk. I'll leave it at that. But 2023 review. Now, when you're looking at takeaways, you mentioned the top 8, 9 guys, 10 guys. You got production out of most of them. They finished top 8 or so, top 10. What else are you taking away, if anything, from this? Because like you had a couple guys later on, obviously you could fit in there, but for the most part, the argument for going early seemed to justify itself, unless there's something else I'm missing.
No, I think so, especially in two catcher leagues. I think one of the main themes that we talked about, especially up top, why a lot of these guys finished where they did, is because of volume. And I think catcher, more so than any other position, when you're starting to go into your 2024 rankings and analyze these guys, don't just look at the skills, but look at how many games played these guys can play at other positions, because that is absolutely gonna matter. Your Adley Rutschman, your Willson Contreras, your let's see who else. Those were the top 2 guys. Salvi Perez, Tyler Stevenson. Look at which guys get you that added volume, because over a full 162, that's gonna matter. And most other positions, like these guys are full timers, they platoon based on handedness. It's not because they can play other positions. That's something unique to catcher analysis that I think you really need to take into account going forward.
Yep, totally agree. And I think another, never mind, it's 2024. I'll stop there. But
it's not a curse word. 2024.
No, it's just like draft strategy. It kind of shows you get one of the top 10 to 15 guys because most of them pan out, and then just kind of take a shot late, and then if it doesn't work, you can stream because there's going to be streamers. Like I think it's making a bigger case for me, at least, to not double dip up top, because it might hamper other players you can take at different positions to help your team. So that's just a draft strategy talk. That's why I said it's probably better for 2024 discussion. But just kind of looking at the graph, it's some of the dudes panned out late, but at the same time, a lot of the dudes that panned out late, like Bo Naylor, Francisco Alvarez, Mitch Garver, they were on the waiver wire most 12s. So like 15 teams, maybe you need to get lucky, but in 12s, get one of the top 10 to 15 dudes if you want. Go high, go lower end of that, and then you could take a shot late or stream, and you'll be totally fine. I would think that's a very viable strategy going for the next few years, at least, until maybe we see more structure at catcher, which I don't know if we'll ever see again. So definitely something to think about a little bit, maybe. All right, we have a couple listener questions here for you for the catcher's position, because people love catchers, so we do got some action for you here. All righty. Alex at Cranium asks, it will be interesting to see how Moreno's ADP is impacted by this postseason run. Yeah, we kind of agree. I'm real curious to see like those November drafts at FPAS, especially if another good series comes along. Moreno could be that dude. So let's just have fun with it here. You said he went in the 7th round. Is that what you said? 8th round, something like that.
Moreno?
Yeah.
He went 11th.
11th round. How high do you think he jumps? It's going to be tough, but how high do you think he jumps?
So I don't think he does. I think the playoff, especially on the hitter side, like it's interesting to say, oh, now his ADP is going to skyrocket. I think once things settle down, you start looking at stats over January, February, start drafting up again in February. Like I don't really think postseason performance inflates these ADPs really all that much. I think the one exception to that is like injured guys who came back, especially on the pitching side, and looked good in the playoffs. Like that's meaningful. But I don't think Kemp is once this all kind of settles down, and 3 months from now when normal people are drafting, maybe 4 months from now, this will kind of not be an afterthought, but it won't be as fresh.
Definitely. John Dovos asks, super interesting based on the Bloom board he looked at. How do you guys think these guys finish in 2024 if you had to draft now? All these guys are in the top 12. Jonah Heim, Austin Wells, who we didn't even get to mention, Yainer Diaz, Francisco Alvarez. Thank you for a great 2023. Baseball HQ, the pods, Twitter, all the ways you reached players, it all helped. So how would you rank Jonah Heim, Austin Wells, Yainer Diaz, Francisco Alvarez?
I'll go Diaz, Heim, Alvarez, Wells.
Yeah, right now I have Heim over Diaz strictly on playing time. They're right next to each other in my rankings. And then it goes Alvarez Wells for me as well. So if, like I said, if I knew Diaz would play at least 140 games, he'd be one of my very, very top catchers.
He'd be top
tough
5 for you, probably. Sounds like
he's right now. I have him ranked 6th. So yes, he'd be top 5.
Wow,
I think
with the playing time questions.
Yes, and again, these are temporary. Like I'm going to probably change these a ton before they actually hit the shelves. But I like Yainer Diaz that much because I think he plays more next season. I'm pure speculating. Like it's going to be hard to keep him away, but Dusty Baker does dusty things. Kevin Alvis says, is Heim dynasty keeper relevant? The jump in RBIs was great, but did the supporting metrics change enough? It's hard to keep catchers in dynasty for me, period. But I think he is kind of. Depends on your other options, I guess. What about you?
Yeah, no, I think you've got a good point on the dynasty aspect of it. There's a little bit of turnover, although I think that's, I don't know, maybe that's outdated. Maybe that's changing because you were just talking about not only the consistency of the position, but the youth. Maybe this is, but these guys tend to just get so beat up that it's hard to really make a difference in dynasty with these guys.
Yeah, that's the conundrum. But in a vacuum, I'd say yes. I think he's very fancy. It looks like he's going to be a top 10 catcher for a while.
Yeah,
so
agreed. Yeah, to
so
directly
that
answer, yeah, I would agree with that.
And then Kevin Hastings has more of a question / comment, which I think we've all agreed on. I saw others mention it as well tonight. How crazy will it be if there's a World Series game in town during FPAS? I've heard amazing things about it. So what are your thoughts?
I don't know what to expect. I mean, the D-backs need to get there, and it needs to kind of line up. But I think there's World Series games Wednesday night, Friday night, and maybe Sunday night. I know one of them's Friday night. I don't know. That'd be absolutely bonkers. I wonder how many people from FPAS would go. I wonder how much tickets would be. The stadium's like right there, man.
Well, you know the NFBC royalty can afford to go, so they'll make it happen. Doug Dennis, I was talking to him briefly on Twitter. He said FPAS 2001 was his favorite FPAS he's ever been to, and he's pretty much been to all of them. So, and that was the year, obviously.
If you've been to FPAS 2001, you've seen some things.
Yeah, that's because that's literally 22 years ago, folks. So yeah, Doug Dennis has been through it, if you know what I mean. But he said that was by far his favorite one yet because of that World Series stuff we mentioned. So
it'd be fun. The whole vibe, like at AFL games, would be really cool. It would be, yeah, just another reason to root for the Diamondbacks, I guess.
Yeah, it'd be cool because like they showed on Twitter, like during the games and warm-ups and everything, they were showing the playoff games on the big screens so the players could watch it while they're playing the game. It was like a totally different. Yeah, it was pretty wild. And even just like if we didn't want to stay at the hotel bar, just go downtown Phoenix. Like there's a bunch of bars by the stadium. Oh, you could just have a great time.
Love to see what happens to friend of the show, Big Willie G, Will Garofalo, big Arizona fan.
We'd lose him.
It would be electric.
We'd lose him. Yeah, he'd disappear. He'd be gone. So it'd be good for him. He'd be scalping tickets or sneaking into the stadium. There's no doubt about it. With his old school purple and green starter jacket that he rocks. So he'd be there in 2 seconds.
You're legit D-backs fan. Yep, that jacket, dude. Jesus.
Yep. It'd be pretty wild stuff. But that'll do it, Ryan. Wrapped up the review of the catcher's position. Like obviously everyone jokes about it tongue in cheek, but I love the position. I think there's more value to it than people want to admit sometimes because of the stigma that we've had in years past with the catchers, which I will not disagree with. But any final thoughts with the review of the 2023 catcher's position?
No, I got a flight and I got to get up in 6 hours, so I'm done. I'm
All
done.
right,
I hope I wake up.
Yeah, he's going to go freeze in Chicago to watch Notre Dame play USC. Good thing USC doesn't play defense, so Sam Hartman should be able to throw it all over the park, which will be fun. Maybe was it Estime? How do you pronounce it? Estime?
Audric Estime, number 7.
Estime. He should run wild on that defense. So should be a fun one. Should be a fun. Get to see the number 1 draft pick in person. Maybe back to back Heisman.
Mr. Caleb Williams. That'll be a blast. It's I don't know. Those teams aren't really that good. Notre Dame's not that great. USC's not that great. They don't have a defense, and outside of Caleb Williams, it's not much. They do have Zachariah Bryant, who you fantasy football people. Zachariah Bryant, 3 years from now, he's a true freshman.
Oh boy,
I hope to see him. Number 1 for USC.
There we go. Good to hear. Well, you have fun with that. I'll have fun at the pumpkin patch and playing some golf. Yep. And we'll return next week to do. Are we doing first base next week? I'm guessing just going around the diamond.
Probably. Yeah, we'll do first base.
All right.
We'll do some torque talk.
Oh, Nolan Jones, Torque, Tristan Casas.
Oh,
I don't know if we're having enough time. I don't know if we're having enough time, folks. This is going to be a great show. Make sure you get all your questions in. Start them coming now because it's going to be a doozy. But until next time, make sure you check out Ryan on Twitter at RyanBHQ, the podcast at Bubba Bloom Pod. I'm at B. D'Antric. This is Bubba and the Bloom, episode 78, your 2023 Fantasy Baseball Catcher Review. Catch you all next time.